Good afternoon. Welcome to my channel. My name is Sisi Shayale, and the topic, my topic today is know yourself. Um, I was born and brought up in Benin City, Nigeria, and prior to the time I left Nigeria, I consider myself to be, educated. But recently, I have started to question a lot of things that I was taught, most notably, our history, the history that has been taught to us. I mean, if you are listening to this and you are not a black person, if you are not an African, please, this message is probably not for you. I'm talking to my black brothers and sisters, notably Nigerians. I've come to realize that the history that we have been told is is not complete, is being rewritten. A lot of it is false. And now that we are thinking as a nation, we all of us, we are seeing so many things wrong with Nigeria. We want better governance, we want things to function properly the way, you know they should function, not the way they are functioning now, where people are dying, people are hungry. I mean, that our country has been blessed. We are blessed with everything that you can imagine, from natural resources to human resources. Nigerians are, we are hardworking, we are blessed with with everything you can imagine, yet our country is the way it is. So lately, I begin to question myself, like, why is that country like this? And one thing that I, as a Nigerian born, has come to realize is that as a people, I feel that we are trying to solve a problem. We are trying to solve a problem when we haven't looked deep enough to what caused the problems we are experiencing in Nigeria or in Africa as a whole. So it's like we have you have a saw. I'm using this analogy because I trained as a pharmacist, so this is something that I can relate with. If you have a saw you haven't treated properly and you decide to put a bandage on top of this saw, what do you imagine is going to happen? We all know what's going to happen to that wound. It's going to fester, it's going to get worse. So as a people, I feel that we should be concentrating more on what brought us to this extent. Why are we here? Why is Africa the way it is at this time in history? And one thing I realized, that, as I mentioned before, I noticed that our history is not being taught to us. If you want to know what I've gathered so far, is if you want to know the history of that country, you will have to search for it yourself. You have to go and search for the history of what happened to Africa. So for me, I just want to start briefly with slavery. I know that a lot of people don't want to listen to this, but I think that it's an integral part to understanding our continent. To know the way that we want to go forward, we want to move forward. But shouldn't we be understanding our yesterday better? Shouldn't we learn what happened to us as a people to be able to understand where we are now? I mean, we know where we are now. Things are not working the way they should work. We all know that. But why isn't it working? So I feel we should go back, check what's gone wrong, why it went wrong, and then we can begin to sit down as a people and plan better, like, how can we make sure that this doesn't happen again? Because if you don't know what's caused your misfortune, how are you sure you're not going to get that same? Even if we manage to put African continent in a better place, in a place that it ought to be today, if we do not know what brought us here to this point in time now, how can we prevent that from happening again? So I would like to start from the slave trade. I'm not even talking now about the Atlantic slave trade. I just want to, I want us to remember that Africa is where it is now because this has been, an Africa has been under, one of the reasons is Africa has been under slavery for a long time. It has been under slavery. I mean, we blame our leaders. Yes, we don't have, we should have better leaders. But to be able to understand our leadership, we have to know, you know, why are they like this? Because if you look at the other parts of the world, we can't say that, they don't have corrupt leaders. They also have corrupt leaders. But if our leaders, I feel that our leaders are there, one reason that they are the way they are is because they all have shaky foundations. So if I say shaky foundations, I will explain myself later what I mean by shaky foundations. No, it's like you build a house, you're building a house. The foundation you have laid is shaky. How is that house going to be sound? Unless you identify that you have put, bricks that shouldn't be there, you have put them there and you take them off. First you have to identify where those, where that foundation is lacking. What's wrong with the foundation? Where is it? How did it get there? And then you can take it off, and then the bricks, the right bricks to put underneath so that you have a firm foundation. So one thing is, I just feel that, we kind of downplay the slave trade. We downplay colonialism. It's in the past. Everyone is telling us, oh, Africa should move beyond that. It's gone, it's over. As one young man was telling me recently, that's done, and it's over with. We don't need to talk about that. No, I beg to differ. We need to talk about it. We need to talk about it because as an African, as a child, as a daughter of Africa, I didn't know this. I mean, it's not history that is being taught. Like they say, the victors always get to write history. I don't know whether maybe they taught us in the school and I have forgotten, or maybe when I was in school I wasn't listening properly. But a lot of the things that happened in history that I feel that should have been taught to us, I don't remember being taught this. So let's just look briefly at the Islamic slave trade. This has been, from the 7th century. So Africans have been taken as slaves to the Islamic world all the time from 7th century to 20th century. Why am I bringing up Islamic slave trade? Yes, I'm bringing this up. Imagine this is something that started from around the 7th century to the 20th century. So that's the period of hundreds of years. And I'm talking about this because I feel it's part of the things we need to know, as a people. So from 7th to 20th, that's some 1300 years that people were taken from the African continent as to go somewhere as slaves. So the numbers of our brothers and sisters that were taken for this slave is about, they estimate it to be 3 million, anything from 3 million to 7 million Africans were transported. And we can't say that this Islamic slave trade is is really over, because even now we are hearing on social media about some of our African brothers and sisters who are being traded as slaves today as we speak. So that is still not over. Something that started from the 7th century, to this century where we are now, is still an ongoing thing. So the reason I'm talking about this is I don't know about other people, but as for myself, I have come to realize that, to know who you are, you have to know something about your past. Take this as, on a personal note. If you are going on a journey, you have to put in your GPS, you have to put in your location where you are going in your GPS, so that you'll be able to get to your destination. And to know where you are, you really have to know where you are coming from. If you don't know where you are coming from, I think it's really difficult to know where you are, talk less of knowing where you are going to. This is why I personally, I have been curious to know more about who I am as an African, as a West African, as a Nigerian. Who am I? Before Nigeria was called Nigeria, we had a different African empires. What are the names of those empires? What happened to them? What happened that they are no more in existence, apart from just a very few of them? So again, my topic is knowing us, Africans, knowing who we are, knowing what happened to us, so that we will take care when we are rebuilding, to make sure that we don't repeat those mistakes, those historical mistakes that were made. So in that vein, I also like to talk about the transatlantic slave trade. Okay, so I've come to realize that when things happen to other people, yes, it's a big deal, but when it happens to Africans, nobody seems to care. Nobody wants to talk about it. Oh, don't talk about it, that's over. No, it's not over, because the effects are still being felt today. The effect is still being felt. So how is it over? It's probably over for you, but it's not over for the the Africans that are still suffering under this. So whether you want to talk about it or not, it's relevant. If it's not relevant to you, it's relevant to us Africans. So that's why I said, if you're not an African, if you're not a black person from Africa, this topic is probably not what you want to hear. So just, feel free to go to another channel and listen to another topic, because this topic is really about us Africans. So talking about the transatlantic slave trade, this Britain abolished slave trade 1807, but the slave system was abolished 1888. So as early as late as 1888, it was it was an ongoing thing. And for the USA, it was abolished 1808. So the start of the transatlantic slave trade, so the first batch of Africans, they arrived in the Americas in 1493. So officially we can say that, I'm quoting from a book here, History of Slavery by James Worthing. If you read the History of Slavery by James Worthing, it says that the first batch of Africans arrived in the Americas in 1493. So from 1493 to 1808, when slavery was abolished in America. So let's see how many years is that. So that's over 400 years. And in this space of time, how many Africans was transported to America and the Americas? So it's estimated that about 12 million Africans were taken. 12 million Africans. I can't remember any teacher, or maybe I wasn't paying attention. I can't remember any teacher telling me that about 12 million Africans were taken, forcibly taken at gunpoint from that continent to United States of America and to the other islands of America. So from these 12 million that were taken, they said that about 10.5 survived. Who was counting? You know, anyone that died just simply got thrown into the sea. Nobody really cared. So this estimate is this is what they estimate, because our lives were not really worth much. Our lives weren't worth much. So when any of our brothers and sisters died, they simply got thrown overboard. But from the records that some people kept, because some of those sailors, they actually kept logs. From the records, they estimate 10.5 actually reached America. So what are the consequences of this slave trade? You know, how did it affect us? Just recently I started thinking about this properly, like how did slave trade even affect us? But for once, you know, for one, we know who benefited. We know who benefited. Okay, so America was practically built on the backs of Africans. Yes, to run their plantations, because that was the reason they came there in the first place. They came, you know, the Europeans came to African continent in search of something. They didn't come there to help Africans. They didn't come there to benefit us in any way. They came there for a purpose, and their purpose was to get Africans as slaves. They needed this because they needed them to come and build up America. So in the space of this almost 400 years, they were taking young men and young women from our continent to build up America. What was happening to the African continent? What was happening to that? So let's not forget, you know, they were taking people, but they were also doing things to the established African authorities, you know, the systems that they made in place. They had to dismantle these empires. They had to dismantle them. They had to destabilize some. They had to outright destroy others to enable them to get our brothers and sisters they wanted. So that's just it in a nutshell. So Britain was another big player in the slave trade. So so which part did Britain play about this in this slave trade? Well, they were very zealous in acquiring slaves. In fact, you can call Britain the greatest Islamic nation of the 13th century. So that's, we can call them that. I'm not sure they were the first to enter there. They weren't the first to start slave trade. But when they entered, they entered and they saw the benefit. So they became the greatest participants. And when it was time to abolish them, you know, they also fought really hard to abolish slave trade. Not that you know, it wasn't an overnight thing that they abolished slave trade. There was a fight, you know. Maybe next in another video we'll talk more about the process. You know, I'm just, this is something that I feel that we should know. We should know who we are. We should know who our friends are, and we should know who our enemies are. What else was I going to say? Yeah, so back to knowing where we are and where we are going to, because I feel that our problems are complex. yeah, we are human, so every society will have complex issues, but ours is being is being further complicated because we have so many outside influences coming in. So starting from 7th century, that continent, Africa, has never been left alone to develop by itself. Never. So from 7th century, they started taking slaves up to when up to uh, let's say 1493, when the transatlantic slave trade started. The continent has never been left alone. So even when slavery ended, we still didn't get left alone. Guess what? They came in then as colonialists, and they are still there today. So I don't understand how we can speak of going further if we don't look at these issues deeper. Like I was telling a friend of mine was saying the other day that, why it's so and so. It was talking about a president, if that was making um excuse me, he was talking about a president who was making choices, economic choices that his citizens were not happy with, an African president. And he said, why can't we have good presidents? And I looked at him and I said, yes, why can't we have good presidents? You have to go inside and see how these presidents are being elected. How were they elected? Even the one that was before that president, who was he? How did he get in there? How did he live? So the more you dig, the more you find out that the foreign influences in African nations is quite complex. It's complex. So it's not enough to say, oh, we want to have good leadership. How can you have good leadership if you don't know why you are having bad leadership? If you don't explore that avenue, if you don't explore it and seal that avenue, you will continue to have bad leaders. You will continue to have bad leaders. So I just, I'm begging my African brothers and sisters, let us look deeper. Let us look beyond thinking our leaders are corrupt. That is why the continent is not moving as fast as we want it to. Yes, African nations are picking up. They are picking up. We thank the Most High for that. But they are not picking up the way they should, based on, the resources that we have. They are not going fast enough. So let us think more about this, because as we speak, this is ongoing. Colonialism never went away. It's an ongoing thing. And even now, there's still, choices being made for some of our nations based on foreign policies that are actually not, let me not just say shady, let me not say shady, but let's say these foreign policies are being put in place to benefit the Western government much more than they benefit Africans. That's a sad thing, but that's what is going on. So, and I feel that one of the reasons is because we as a people, we we have listened too much to being told slavery is over and done with, colonialism is over and done with. It's not. It's not, because it's ongoing. It's ongoing. I was born and brought up in Nigeria, so I can categorically tell you that colonialism is not over. They say we have got independence. I don't see how we have got independence. I have not really seen it. But as at the time I lived in Nigeria, this wasn't something that I was really conscious of. But now I live in the western part of the world, and based on things I've been seeing, based on things I've been experiencing as a black person in Europe, it's made me start thinking like, by the way, you know, why are we here? Why do we have to go through all these things just because we live in another person's land? At the time I left Nigeria, my own thought was, oh, I want to see other parts of the world. I didn't really, I wasn't conscious of the way people saw me, or people see me, just based on my color. That's one thing, you know. A lot of us Africans, we see people and we take you at face value. We look at you as a human being, you know. We look at you as a human first of all. We tend not to just flat out class you just because of your color that we are saying. And maybe that's a problem, maybe that's a fault, I don't know, because based on history, if you look at the African continent, we have always tended to welcome people. But that's, I think that one of the reasons we tend to do that is we have that innate love for mankind. We have that innate tendency to welcome strangers. Like, I remember when my great-grandmother was alive, you won't believe this, and when we were cooking, we were making dinner, we always had to make a portion just in case someone comes in to visit us. You know, we believe that you need to welcome strangers. You need to welcome them. You need to give them, you know, give them a place to live if they need a place to live. We believe in, if you have, you need to share. That was an innate African belief that had been passed down. So every time I made dinner, every time I cooked, and I hadn't made a portion for somebody else that might walk in, my great-grandmother, my grandmother, they were angry with me. They said, no, where's the visitor's portion? And I would be like, but there's no visitor here. And they'll say, oh, you don't know, a visitor might come in, so you should have made a portion for them. So that's the innate belief of a lot of Africans. So whether that's a mistake or not, but whether Westerners took that as a mistake or not, but we believe in the Most High, God. And if you read the Bible, that's what is written in the Bible. It's, you know, it's a basic Christ. If you are following Christ, that's a belief that you should love your neighbors, you should welcome them. But those that came in to colonize us, to civilize us, who were so-called Christians, they didn't see it that way. They took kindness and love for weakness. Maybe you can claim it as a weakness, you can claim it as a witness, but I think that it's only the Most High God who will actually be able to be the judge of that. So thank you so much for listening to this, and as you can see, it's a topic that I really feel strongly about, because if you look at what's been happening recently, for some reason a lot of leaders they have begun to scramble again for Africa. We had a the French president, or is he called the head of, I don't know what's his title, was he a president or a prime minister? He has been to Africa many times. We had an German chancellor, Angela Merkel. She has been there. Then we had the British prime minister, Theresa May. She's been there recently. So why all this sudden interest in Africa? So before we begin a third round of whatever it is that is going on, let us take time, to look back at history, to know what happened, where we are the way we are, where are we, and where do we want to be. Do we want to continuously be a place that is so blessed like the African continent, that has been enriching all the other continents? Everybody has benefited from Africa. America has been built up with African resources. Europe has been built up with African resources. It's only Africans who hasn't benefited from the God-given resources. Only Africans. So let us begin to think about this as the European leaders scramble again now for Africa. Let us think deeply about what we are doing. Let us look at our leaders properly, what they are doing. Let us participate as much as we can to make sure that, to make sure we do what the best you can do. Every one of us, do the best you can do wherever you are, to make sure that we also, Africans, can benefit from what the Most High has deposited in Africa. Thank you so much for listening, and if you like this, please don't forget to subscribe and share this video, and I hope to see you again sometime. May the Most High continue to bless you and guide you as you take decisions concerning every aspect of your life. Have a great day.